acid attack victims coming to us and saying that the policy for restitution and compensation which has been granted is inadequate. Do something to increase the grant of compensation. A sole woman who comes to us says that I had parted with my child to my husband for just a few days. I find that my husband has absconded with the child. I really don't know where the child is. A disabled person, a visually blind person, who comes to us and tells that under the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, it has been provided that the amount which is payable under the social welfare scheme of the Government of India and the Government of the states must be enhanced by 25% in the case of a disabled person. But this has not been done. So you see the variety of grievances which come to us as a court of last resort, of people who come to you with a sense of aspiration, people who approach you with a sense of hope, people who approach you with a feeling that there are institutions of governance which can perhaps move the way forward, move the needle in our quest to realize the achievement of justice. We have excellent laws. The implementation of our laws is also done in good faith. But in a country as vast, as diverse, the real challenge is to use the transformative potential of a democracy, the transformative potential of the Constitution, by converting it into the real realization of rights for people on the ground. The right to legal aid was not a given at the birth of the Constitution. It came in, as we know, by the enactment of Article 39A, by the institution of a statutory form to the legal aid movement. But yet, all in a day's work, all in a week's work, so very often you find under trials who come to you and say that, well, I have not been released for several weeks despite the grant of bail. Convicts who come and tell you in court that despite the fact that I have put in 30 years after conviction for the offense of murder, I am yet to be released. These are matters which are part of the daily work of the Supreme Court. And that really is a clear indicator that marginalization, whether it be in the form of gender, marginalization, whether it be in the form of caste, marginalization, whether it be in the form of disability, or marginalization, whether it be in the form of the victims of violence, all too often poses a real barrier to the realization of rights. Now, how do we respond as a system? And I think that the real work of the work which is being done by the National Commission for Women, on the one hand, and by NALSA on the other, the real work of the work which is being done by these two flagship missions of our nation is to take the reach of justice to the doorstep of people. Our earlier models of justicing were founded on one premise, which is that she who is in need of justice must approach justice. Now that model where she who is in need of justice must approach justice doesn't factor in the inequalities which determine whether you will get justice or otherwise. The work which is done by NALSA and the work which is being done by the National Commission for Women has flipped the paradigm. And by flipping the paradigm, it has provided real-time justice to people who are in need of justice, by making them aware of their rights, by placing the burden to access justice not on them, but by placing the burden to access justice on us. In other words, justice becomes not just a sovereign function of the state, but justice truly is regarded as a service which we provide to our citizens. Now, technology, which is close to my heart, is opening up new facilities and new prospects for the realization of the rights of our people. For one thing, technology provides for transparency. Second, technology provides for a comprehensive record of everything that happens. And third, technology can be, if properly wielded, oblivious to the underlying inequalities in the system based on caste, on class, on religion, on gender, or a variety of other positions in society. Let me give you just one example. Orders for bail are passed routinely by the High Courts, by the District Judiciary and by the Supreme Court. But once an order for bail is passed, that order for bail has to be implemented on the ground by the superintendent of the jail, say in Samastipur, or in Gonda, or in Bahraich, or in any remote part of the country. How do you ensure that the fruits of the order of bail actually reach out to those citizens for whom the bail was granted? That order has to be communicated to the under trial or to the convict, and that has to be implemented by the district court in charge of issuing the release or the release warrant for the individual. Last year, the Supreme Court devised a new app called the Faster 1.0. The purpose of the app which we devised in the Supreme Court was to ensure a quick communication of the orders granting bail from the Supreme Court to the district and central jails. But having developed the app, how do you ensure that the superintendent of jail actually opens his email or her email account and reads the order by which the bail was communicated? There's no way that you can do that. Now, we have employed technology, and technology today opens up limitless possibilities, as I said. In our latest version, which we unveiled yesterday to my colleagues in the Supreme Court, we have used blockchain for the purpose of ensuring that we can carefully monitor the manner in which orders granting bail are actually enforced on the ground. So when an order is passed, say by the court of my distinguished colleague Justice Kaul or Justice Sanjeev Khanna, the order communicating bail, the order enlarging an accused on bail, is then automatically channelized to the Supreme Court user. The Supreme Court user transmits the order granting bail to the district court, to the superintendent of jail, and to the High Court. In the course of the blockchain, every aspect of the transaction is recorded online. That order cannot be fudged. That order cannot be duplicated. That order cannot be replaced because it has a hashtag which is associated with it. Now, once this is done, you can extract compliance because you know exactly at the origin of the order as to whether the order has reached the recipient in the district or central jail. Has that order been transmitted to the district court? And has the district judge passed an order, or the chief metropolitan magistrate passed an order, actually issuing the release warrant? In other words, what I want to emphasize is that the devil is always in the fine print. And our mission, whether in NALSA or in the National Commission for Women, is to ensure that not only should we lay down policies which are forward-looking, for us as judges, not only that we should lay down judgments that are forward-looking, but what the National Legal Services Authority tells us and what this movement tells us is that we have to go that extra mile in ensuring that all the benefits of social welfare actually reach out to our citizens. And in doing that, we can have technology as a real ally. There have been great achievements by NALSA, but much remains to be done. I'll just give you one or two figures. Justice Sanjeev Khanna quoted a few figures. In the recently concluded National Lok Adalat, as many as 3,09,16,790 pending and pre-litigation cases were taken up, and 2.04 cases were disposed of, involving a total value of 14,347 crores. I think it's important that just as we introspect on days such as the Legal Services Day, we must also celebrate the achievements of our foot soldiers, for whom the mission owes a debt of gratitude. But there are problems. According to a 2018 study, in the context of India's prison population, the per capita spending on legal aid was just 0.75 paise per prisoner. Another report of 2022 highlights that the panel lawyers across the country dropped from nearly 60,000 in 2020 to a little over 50,000 in 2022. Only 25 out of 36 states' legal service authorities had more than 20% women lawyers on their legal aid panels. There are only 587 paralegals in all who are transgenders. There have been improvements in some areas as well. The share of women paralegals has risen from 35% in 2020 to 40% in 2022. The under-trial review committees saw 47,618 prisoners being recommended for release, out of which 24,789 were actually released. The walk-in legal aid clinic to assist women in distress launched by NCW in collaboration with the Delhi State Legal Services Authority is a groundbreaking step for women's access to legal counsel without having to run from pillar to post. The Supreme Court's initiatives, virtual hearings, transcription of hearings for constitutional bench cases, and infrastructural changes on the Supreme Court are headed in the same direction. The launch today of a legal guide is a crucial step in advancing technology to facilitate legal awareness for women. Similarly, the block awareness program for Vidhan Se Samadhan is praiseworthy for providing education on the laws and policies to the women residing in far-reaching areas of the country. I strongly believe that these initiatives would help women in availing of legal services. Truly, the worth of a family is determined by the position of a woman in the family. The worth of a community is determined by the worth which is ascribed to the woman in the community. The worth of an organization is definitively defined by the work which that organization ascribes to women who work for that organization. And therefore, what is a nation? A nation ultimately is a conglomeration of families, of societies, of communities, of groups, of states, of self-governing communities. So in our march for the future, our worth as a nation will largely depend on the worth which we ascribe to women. And ascribing worth to women is not a woman's issue. Ascribing worth to women is primarily a man's issue as well. So I think we need to change our mindsets before we can move the movement forward. I'm deeply grateful to you for inviting me this evening, and I compliment the tremendous work which is being done by the National Legal Services Authority, ably led by my distinguished colleague Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul, by Justice Sanjeev Khanna in the Legal Services Committee, by our predecessors who have come here, because after all, we only carry a baton which we will pass on to succeeding generations. Thank you. Namaskar.